Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Sapphire Blackwood. I am not your normal host, and if this is your first meeting, welcome. If this is not your first meeting, Dallin is in Spain having a wonderful time. So let's give it up for Dallin and his awesome time. Yeah! So he can't be here today, so I'm here filling in, and thank you all very much for coming to Stone Brewery, and thank you, Stone. Make sure you get some drinks, some food, because they give this to us pro bono, and we're really happy about that. So I'm just going to give you a quick update. I don't have the everything as far as legislative updates that Dallin usually gives. But I do know there is a meeting going on, a very important meeting going on in Encinitas right now to see if they'll allow the cannabis initiative on that vote. So on the ballot for this year, so let's hope that that goes through. Chula Vista is obviously in the mix for next year, and we're just waiting to see how that pans out. And Oceanside, of course, voted not too long ago. And so if anyone is interested in more in that, we can talk after. The other important thing that I did want to note to everybody is that, one sec, let me get my notes. The state is actually accepting public comment right now for anyone who's interested in either cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, retail, or is currently operating right now. Public comment period ends August 27th, so we only have a couple more weeks to get in your comments. And what these comments, so it's the rule-making process, really boring crap. All you gotta know is that when a law is made and the legislators decide on something new, they want your input and they have to have it by law. So your input really does matter in shaping these laws. And so if you go in, read the laws, let the different regulators know how you want that law changed, you can go ahead and do so. And those three regulators are the California Department of Farm and Agriculture, which regulates cultivators, the California Department of Public Health, which regulates manufacturers, and the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which is under the Consumer Affairs Department, which regulates distribution, retailers, and I'm probably missing a bunch, events. So go in there, give them your comments, let them know what's up. If you want to know where, just find me after and I'll give you the emails where you can write them directly. All right. So without listening to me chitter chatter any longer, Chris, do you want to say anything? Do you want to give a president's report this month, or do you want to sit back and relax?
Sit back and relax.
All right. Chris, our president, and I really don't have much to say. It's August. Thank you for coming. It's summer. I hope everyone's having fun and getting a tan. And without further ado, I want to introduce Mindy, who is our sponsor today. She's with Hub International, and she, I left my notes over there, but she does insurance for cannabis vendors, cannabis businesses. She can tell you a lot more. Her brochures are right there, right on your tables. Take a look, and I'll give it off the microphone to Mindy.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey guys. Hola. I don't want to sit up here and bore you with Insurance 101 because it is boring. And I know that we've had a couple insurance brokers up here before. So let me just give you a quick layout. Yes, I can do general liability. Yes, I can insure your properties. Yes, I can insure your crops. Let's talk a little bit more about crop insurance. A lot of stuff now has to be grown, well, I guess everything has to be grown inside. But no one within the crop insurance is actually taking into account what that means. So your light bulbs, for example, they're what's maintaining your plants. If that breaks down, everything inside is gone. So a lot of crop insurance is not actually covering like manufacturer breakdown. That's something that we can do. Workers' comp, I can do that. If you have secured people with guns, I can insure them too. My biggest update that I actually really wanted to give you guys was cash. This is cash-based business. we are overflowing with cash if you're actually a cultivator, a dispensary, whatever. I can insure up to $1 million worth of cash currently. This is a new policy that's being tested out in the state of California, and I am one of 2 brokers that actually have access to this. So if you have cash, I can insure that $1 million, like I said, per location or per entity. So if you're a dispensary that maybe has 2 locations or just 2 entities, that's $2 million worth of cash, or $4 million depending on how we work it. Are you transporting your cash? Because I'm pretty sure you are. It's just not growing in your dispensary, or else you would have major issues. We are insuring cash while in transit. We are insuring product while in transit, up to $1 million worth of both. So um, those are some new developments in the insurance industry. I know you guys get bored from hearing of people like me, but I promise you that I am trying to do new and competitive things in this world, and we're actually making it happen. So please contact me. The other thing, I left information on your table about Hub International, which is the actual broker that I work for. The insurance carriers, of course, are a different situation. My card is also on there. I also wanted to introduce you guys to Strio Intelligence, which is a company that we work exclusively with. So this is a company that's made up of the most amazing human beings on this earth. They're all retired Navy SEALs, MARSOC, and Special Forces Marines. They've actually been doing consulting for the insurance industry, telling them exactly what they need to do, how they need to insure risks, and what guidelines they need to use in order to do insurance. They are transporting all of your cash and product while 100% insured. So we work exclusively with them because they've been actually consulting the insurance companies. They have a leg up. So let me know if there's any questions or concerns that you might have. I'm here all night, obviously. But other than that, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update. Thank you so much for letting me host this event. I think ACP is an amazing organization, and I look forward to talking to many of you later.
Thank you, Mindy. If you need insurance, you need to talk about things, make sure your cash is safe. Get over there with Mindy. Alrighty, I'm just going to jump right into our next speaker, Colin, or our first speaker, I guess, who's our sponsor. Colin Parent is a La Mesa City Council member. He is a lawyer. He attended NYU for law school, and he currently works at Circulate San Diego. And he's actually a native here. He attended UC San Diego and grew up in East County. He is going to talk to us today about what's going on in La Mesa. If many of you don't know, La Mesa recently voted to tax adult use in the city of La Mesa, which is a big deal because in 2016, a voter initiative, ballot initiative was entered into law that allowed medical-only dispensaries, manufacturing, cultivation in the city. But now the city is, being progressive and whatnot, and agreeing to tax and regulate adult use as well, which means a lot to people, investors, and everything that are currently in the city of La Mesa or may want to get in. So let's thank Colin a lot for his time and for joining us here today.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Colin Parent. I'm a city council member in La Mesa. Anyone doing business in La Mesa? Okay, very good. So you can come tell us what we can do better after this. So a couple of things before I start talking about what's going on in La Mesa. Just a little bit of background on me. So I work at Circulate San Diego with Sapphire mentioned. We're an advocacy nonprofit. We do advocacy for public transit, street safety, and sustainable growth. So I spend most of my, and I'm an elected official in La Mesa, but I have a day job. Most of my time is spent in that day job, and I actually work as an advocate. I'm a professional advocate. So I'm oftentimes not making I spend most of my time not as a government decision maker, but trying to press government decision makers to do the right thing. So that's definitely how I view that's how a lot of people in this room, in this space, have to view the world too, because of the nature of the work that you do. So, a little bit of background about me in La Mesa. So I ran for city council in 2016. It's the first time I ran for office. I supported Measure U that was on the ballot at the same time, which would change La Mesa's rules and require the city license medical marijuana. And I was the only person on the ballot who supported Measure U, and when I got elected, I was the only member of my council to have supported Measure U. They all had voted prior to that to ban it, right? So I wasn't really sure how faithfully my colleagues would try to implement the rules, right? Because there's plenty of other jurisdictions that have had ballot measures in the past who've done everything that they can to try to not implement the will of voters and to try to make sure that those things are not allowed to open. Some of our neighbors, I mean, Lemon Grove got a lot of press coverage around that very recently. So I think La Mesa has taken a very different approach. I think we've taken a good faith approach to try to implement those rules. My colleagues who may have, their first policy preference may not have been to have that measure pass, but they've said, okay, well, the voters have spoken, and they've been, I think they've been doing a good job trying to faithfully implement that. It's easy for me to vote for them because like I was for it to begin with, right? A little harder for them, but I think they've been doing a fair job. So we only, at the council, only get to see the applications when there's an appeal from the planning commission. We've seen a number of appeals. We've denied all of the appeals except for one, and we actually got sued on that, and so we're gonna deal with that. The appeal was actually by it was a tenant in the same building called the Center for Children, and they argued persuasively, we felt it was persuasive, that they were operating an after-school program, which is an enumerated use that you can't open a dispensary under Measure U. The applicant sued and is arguing that it's not an after-school program. And so we're going to have, and actually we just voted last night to have another rehearing to give everyone another opportunity to make their case, and so we'll reevaluate those things. I can probably answer very basic questions about that, but not like super detailed questions, as you might understand. So the other big things that are happening in La Mesa, and Sapphire suggested pieces of it, is that we have a two-tiered approach for adult use that we're moving forward with. So we put on the ballot a tax measure, and the tax measure is it allows us to tax differently the adult use and medical. It provides a range. Our understanding is that they're pretty reasonable. We didn't hear a lot of opposition to it. We were putting it forward. So hopefully the voters are gonna adopt that. Concurrently, we put together a municipal code that says that will allow for adult use, and it will be contingent upon the voters adopting the ballot measure. So so technically we don't allow adult use yet. We don't tax yet, but we're by election day, November, we anticipate that we will. What we allow for adult use is essentially this sort of two ways to go about it. If you have an existing Measure U business, then you can apply to get adult use under that as well. And then if you don't have one, you can do a separate application for through a very similar but a little better streamlined process for the new one. So, and that's because we learned some lessons from implementing Measure U. There were some pieces of Measure U that were hard to implement, so we're going to do a little bit of tweaks to make it a little bit easier for us and for the industry to navigate. So let's see. And by the way, let me just preface this, or just explain, when I got elected in 2016, I was the first Democrat in 26 years to get elected in La Mesa. So my colleagues, and they're not all, and actually two of them subsequent to that have left the Republican Party, to their credit, which is great, in my opinion. But their politics are different than mine, right? Like the folks who left the Republican Party, it's not that they became like raging liberals, right? That's not their preference. But I do want to give them some credit for taking a bolder approach, a responsive approach to the voters. That's a good thing for democracy. And the fact that we got a majority of our council to put adult use as in play in city of La Mesa is pretty extraordinary. So I think that speaks to the sentiment of our government and of our council. I still think there are challenges still, and we're not every application is gonna go through easy, and there will be some complications, and I'm sure we'll have those dialogues. But I do think the city has been operating in good faith, and I can and I have just tonight, and I'm sure I will in the future, hear complaints and concerns about how we're operating things, and I'll just tell you, I won't be defensive about that. I want to know about that. Like, let's know. We want to. I think the city really earnestly wants to be to operate this effectively and fairly. We're not always doing everything right, but we want to know about it. We're going to do our best to try to address that. So that's the kind of the update about La Mesa. I'm happy to answer questions. My guess is that if you have really technical questions, other people in the audience are going to have better answers than me, but we can give this a go.
If anyone needs a mic.
How many applications do you have pending? How many dispensaries are active, and how many do you plan to have down the road?
Yeah, so I think we have, I'm actually not sure how many live applications we have. I think we have at least one that's operating. I think we have one that has begun operating like a week or two ago. And the staff's sort of guesstimation, because we have, if you open one, you can't open up another one 1,000 feet away and that sort of thing. And so the staff is guessing that we're going to have like 20 to 30. But who knows?
Is that defined in the post?
Yeah. Oh no, there's not a cap in the post U. So it's not a cap. It's just a sort of geographic thing. So, but again, it's a guess. I mean, who knows? It could be something really different. I believe so. So there's more experts here. We've been. But the thing is, we've been getting I'm becoming most familiar with the ones that are dispensaries because they're the ones that are going through the CUP and where there's competition, and those are the competitors are the ones who are doing the appeals, and so those are the ones that I get.
What was your question?
So it's going to be MPFs or cultivations, manufacturing facilities
In the city of La
in the
Mesa?
city of Louisa.
Yes.
And how many? Is there a cap?
There's no cap.
There's no cap.
And they don't have the buffer, the 1,000-foot
Right.
buffer between the two businesses. So
Yeah.
Is the cannabis space still 500 square foot? The grows?
yes.
So like, you're competing with LA and San Francisco and Desert Springs. You can't compete. It's basically just shutting everybody down. I mean, I'm not being mean, but I'm just saying, like, do you want people to do cannabis in San Diego? Since with all this regulation and stuff, you can't. It's going to be where you can grow the cheapest. I mean, I'm just saying, like, so
Sure.
there's people on the council, they don't want it, that's what they're going to do, and then they'll open up, and you're just going to get shut down. Again, I'm not trying to be mean or pick on the others. And then, so the application started in like January 2016, right? That was the first time we
I think 17.
Yeah, right after 17. And, and no one's got a permit yet, right?
No, there's permits. There's one that's open already. Yeah. There's at least we've had hearings. We've heard 4 appeals, and I think there might be
So
some.
here's what it is. So that's a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, you have to have a building. The only people that can rent a building for a year and a half are not normal people. What it is, it's people's names, and then there's people coming from out of state, Colorado, Northern California, and then you send up people's names, and they're going to get all the licenses, and no normal person from San Diego is actually going to get one. So the barrier to entry is so high. So like that barrier to entry is making it so no one can get one.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just saying what's
understand,
going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the question is actually, are you aware of that challenge, and do you see a solution to that?
Yeah. No, I think there is a challenge, and the solution is not evident, right? So, you have a situation where the rules were you can't do anything, and then the industry put something on the ballot to allow for this, and so everything that we've been operating under has not been, it's It's not been something that the council put on. I didn't put it on. I wasn't even there,
Yeah,
right?
I know,
But my
I know,
colleagues
yeah,
were.
I know, I know.
But I know, I mean, seriously, but my colleagues didn't put it on there. The staff didn't put it on there. It was you know, it's this other thing. So there's uh, yeah. So there's going to be a challenge to implement that, and it's going to get a little bit better with the new ballot measure because we've streamlined some of those things. But let me also represent to you too that the you know, the
But I've done
process
this
is
14
getting
years.
the
If
process
I'm
of
gonna do it, I can.
yeah
Because
yeah
no,
no well,
people that have never done it that used to say that it was illegal,
yeah
they're like, oh, I can make money on it. They're coming in and getting everything.
yeah.
Again, Measure U is an initiative that was voted in by the people. People, literally, he cannot change it, the council cannot change it, no one can change it unless there's another voter initiative in. That's literally the law.
This guy's cool, and I'm just saying that's what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, tell the other people, like, do they want people from San Diego to get them, or do they want rich people that already have $20 million to get them? You know what I mean? Like, they're gonna get, and they don't even care about cannabis. Like, actually love cannabis. You know, it's not. I don't do it because I surf and I like weed. It's straight truth. Like, I'm not trying to get rich. I just want to do what I love. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I actually live in the basis, so I understand the predicament you're kind of in, given the spaciousness of the area versus the surrounding neighborhoods and stuff, which is a major affront to you. I guess my question is as somebody from Mesa, how open are, I know you said some of the other ones may have slid from being out and out Republicans to other things, but does that mean their personality or their perception of the issue has changed at all? Because I know that you guys can't necessarily change things by yourself, the ballot initiatives and stuff that ultimately make the decisions, but there's been a lot of city councils who are very openly advocates against this industry and the changes, positive changes that we were trying to make. So in your opinion, do you think other council members in that area are becoming more open to the idea based off of the positive nature of the way things have gone so far, or is their stigma still the same toward this industry?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and I'll you know, premise this with the fact that I didn't know my colleagues very well before I got on the council, right? And so, but I have heard, you know, in just sort of our side conversations and that sort of thing, that yeah, there is a sentiment change, right? People are more comfortable with it because they're more familiar with it, and I actually suspect that's going to be the experience of a lot of people in California, including elected officials. So I don't think that they all are like 100% super excited about it, right? Like maybe they're not going to come here and get on camera talking about it. Maybe they will. I mean, go ahead and invite them, right? But I do think that there's a sort of a because of that experience, that because they've had to engage with people from industry, people who are patients, people who are residents who are interested in this, are more familiar with it, and that has bred a degree of comfort. So, yes, sir.
So I've heard the discussion, Republicans and Democrats a lot, and just do you feel, at least in La Mesa, with the people you're dealing with, that Republicans are less tolerant of this than Democrats are? Is that,
It's a good question. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I mean, right, because it's not like there's people in my family who are Republicans who use cannabis, right? And I suspect there's a party difference, but I don't have any data to show you. And I'll tell you too, it's not just that there aren't Republicans who are supportive of cannabis. I met plenty of Democrats walking door to door who were very afraid when Measure U was coming up, right? I mean, I had this similar experience a couple of times. The one that really stuck with me, I was so I'm younger than most of my colleagues, right, by like a fair amount.
No.
Yeah, and I was walking to this door one day, and there was two Democrats, registered Democrats there. They were sort of my age. It was like a young couple, right, who moved to La Mesa, because this is actually a big demographic in La Mesa. It's young couples who are trying to buy or start a family for the first time, and they're both Democrats, and they're both like 33 or 35 or something. And I'm walking up to this door, and because we have these lists for campaigns. People aren't been precinct walking. You have a list, and so I'm walking up this door. I'm like, oh, this is great. If they open this door, I'm getting these votes. Like these are like my guys. And this young guy opened the door around my age, and he says, "Oh," I introduced myself. I said, "Oh yeah, Colin, I know who you are. You know, and you seem like a nice guy, and I'm glad there's a Democrat running, but you know, I can't vote for you because you support medical marijuana, right?" And I had to, you know, we had a conversation. I explained to him that what Measure U was, and it had all these restrictions and rules, and you had to have, you know, security, and it couldn't be in your schools, and all that, and that's what I supported, and he said he was going to vote for me. I think he probably did after we had that conversation. But you know, it's not a strict partisan issue, right? And it's also true that in La Mesa we have, before we adopted the measure, we had a ton of unregulated dispensaries, right? And the neighbors were not happy about it, and they had every reason to be, because they were open. Often, many of them were open in the wrong spots. They were open till, you know, 3 in the morning. It was really not a great situation. We still have plenty of that going on now still in just maybe at smaller degrees. So the politics of it are really challenging. They don't cross exactly on partisan lines. But I think the answer to that is sort of similar to my answer earlier, is that you talk to people about it, you get people more familiar, you show good operators and people acting in good faith, and people become more comfortable over time. So, yes, sir.
So it's been well over a year since applications have been in La Mesa. And so when do you see, manufacturing and cultivation actually CUPs being issued? And then my second question is, are you guys going to drag those applicants through the coals when they have to go through their TIs in the building department?
Yeah, I don't know what the timeline is for them to be, the CUPs to be granted for manufacturing. I do know that the people in the development industry who've done work in La Mesa have oftentimes represented to me that it's very challenging sometimes working with staff, getting things, getting a building permit, getting a you know, whatever permit they need to trigger to be able to activate. It is I don't think we're alone in that. I think that's just a problem in local governments generally, but it is something that I think we do need to do better on. I think what I can represent to you is that it's not some secret anti-cannabis, you know, malice that's informing that, because I hear the same thing from restaurant owners. I hear the same thing from apartment developers. That's a challenge, and actually, I do think that's a challenge that we have in California for development and for businesses generally, right? Like, I'm a Democrat, right? Like, I'm not like against government, right? But I think local governments oftentimes create really difficult barriers to doing things, especially around land use, and the cannabis industry is very much in that land use space. And so we have, now that being said, we are doing some things about it, right? So we last year in our council goes to, it's a sort of day-long planning session, and we directed staff to start doing some work to try to get to the city staff to more of a culture of yes when it comes to our development services. And we hired some consultants. We got some feedback from stakeholders who've done projects in La Mesa. This is before cannabis, right? Because they weren't. It was too early for that. But we made some changes. We made some staff changes. We've started to do some investment in some tracking software so that we can do these things in a more robust way, so that people don't have to go back and forth with staff 1,000 times about, you know, the location of the sink in the bathroom. So we're doing those things, but I'm not gonna represent to you that we're done and we're as business friendly as we ought to be, because we're not, and we need to do better. So, but we are earnestly working toward that.
So I don't know if that was an answer. When are applications going to be really looked at, approved,
Yeah.
or denied?
No, I mean, what I'm saying is it isn't an answer because I don't know. And there's a calendar for when these things come up through the planning commission. And by the way, I'm probably not going to see them because they're not going to get appealed, and the council only sees them when they're appealed. But that's one of those things that I'll tell you. This is something like this is something I learned as an advocate, right? Is that if it turns out that they're taking forever, right? And that the people who are going through this process are feeling that they're not getting a good, fair hearing, and the staff isn't treating them appropriately. You gotta tell people. You gotta tell elected officials. You gotta give me a call, right? So I have a few business cards in my pocket, but my cell phone number is on the City of La Mesa's website. You can send me an email address there, or an email there. Like there's all sorts of ways, and I would encourage you to communicate those things to me and to my colleagues. You know, there's oftentimes these problems are solved by someone in my position calling the city manager and saying, hey, we're getting this complaint, is this person in that department really holding all these things up? This doesn't make sense. Those are the kinds of dialogues that we can have, and I would encourage you to let us know. And be as, you don't have to be as super specific right now, oh, it's that guy in that office who's giving me a hard time. But you can talk to me, and you can, and you should, and that's part of why I'm here, and that's part of why I go to these things, is try to make sure that people know that there is a sympathetic ear, and I can't promise I'm going to solve everything and make it all better, but I can promise you I'll talk to someone about it and see if we can try to make it better.
Thank you. Unless we have one more question. Thank you. Thank you very much, Colin. Again, not an easy job being in council. And for anyone who doesn't know, I do land use consulting in the industry. So I actually have several clients in the city of La Mesa. And I can assure you it's not Colin's fault. It's been a very long process for everyone that has applications in there. Hang on. I know we've been dealing with a lot of staff turnover in the city of La Mesa if you've been there for long enough, and it has been a little bit tough, and it's very tough in smaller jurisdictions when you only have really one person in charge. So they got a lot on their plate in La Mesa, so let's give them a hand, but also yes, let's keep the pressure on and make sure. I'm actually surprised that my hearing in Lemon Grove has come before the city of La Mesa, even if it's just one day. That aside, I'm really excited for our next speaker. His name is Andrew Hart. He's with CMW Media. He is a PR extraordinaire in the cannabis space. Just a little bit about Andrew. He spent nearly a decade at Fox and FoxNews.com. He's won prestigious awards like the Neal Awards, which is a B2B journalism award at Corporate Council magazine. He is currently the CEO of CMW Media, like I said, and they're based here in San Diego. He's a global spokesperson for his clients, and he is excited to get people elevated in and beyond the cannabis space in major publications like Forbes, Reuters, you name it, this guy has those connections. So let's give it up for Andrew.
Hi, so thanks to Sapphire for the introduction to speak. We're CMW Media, we're a PR firm located here in downtown San Diego. Thank you to my team for turning out tonight to come and watch the boss speak. So yes, basically our story, my story is that yes, I did, and I accepted, I own it, I worked for the dreaded Fox News Channel, and for Rupert Murdoch, and for Roger Ailes for 10 years. It was a long time ago, it was a different time. They hired me when I first graduated NYU Journalism School in the year 2000. And the best thing I can say is, for all the negatives of working with those guys, of which I probably don't need to educate any of you on, they do get it, and they know how to manipulate the news media, and they know how to manipulate the way people think. And so I was able to learn an awful lot working with them. So basically the way I see it is that, you have here a PR man who, it's like I worked on the Death Star. And I worked on the Death Star, and I saw everything that was wrong, and then I escaped the Death Star My beautiful wife Megan and I, who I actually met there at Fox, drove across the country because we were over New York in a U-Haul full of all of our stuff, moved to California. I got laid off from my job within 11 months, and we were here in San Diego. There's almost no news media here, and it was a serious moment of, well, I better figure out, what the hell I'm gonna do out here to earn any money. And the transition to PR, journalists call it going to the dark side, funny enough, was very, very natural. And I realized working in New York as a journalist for 10 years, I knew a lot of people. I had contacts, people that went all over, people that went to CNN, to MSNBC, to Entrepreneur Magazine, and I realized, I could probably make a business out of this, and I worked really hard to do that, and I'm lucky. My first job out here, I literally did PR at a company called Directed, which is Congressman Darrell Issa's former company, which makes car alarms and remote start. And I learned doing PR for a company you don't believe in at all is a horrible, soulless job. And I got into doing PR for cannabis, and I really found something that I really, really love. And it's probably the first thing I've ever done in my career that I've believed in. Honestly, I've worked with mothers of kids with epilepsy who have kids that are really, really sick that need this. I've helped them. I've had them tell me that I've helped them, and finally, found something rewarding to do that, helps people. So, thank you. That's what I like to think. So, I'm in my purgatory from working for Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes for so long, so I'm doing my best, and that's 100% what I'm going to do. So I am imparting my lessons out to anyone who will listen, and I freely offer my help, certainly to all of you. So, one of the first things that Sapphire wanted me to walk you through is, what is public relations? I don't want to bore you at all, but certainly I know there is a lot of confusion among CEOs who first sign us up, even marketing professionals, what the hell do you guys do? And notoriously, public relations is the hardest metric for a CEO to assign ROI to. Is the thing I hate the most. We're the first part of the marketing budget that gets cut if there's any financial trouble at the company. So, a good way to describe public relations is organic marketing. It's the word of mouth, either through the media or other people at events, at a trade show, of what the heck is going on, what's this company, what are they doing, etc. To me, as a storyteller, it is storytelling, which is something I do very, very naturally. It's what I do, and if you meet a great CEO, of a company, they know how to tell you a story and to tell their company story, and they're naturally, great at it. I mean, that's the best CEOs I've ever worked with, and just knowing people, knowing how much the media affects things. I mean, it's just an unbelievably important quality of your elevator speech. Can you just tell me your story in a compelling way that makes me want to care about you, invest in you, and that's a lot of what I do. But obviously, there's the other part of learning from the dark side, and all of the things I learned from my former masters, Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes, of the media has certain rules, and they're kind of unbreakable. And the first one is, it's called, if it bleeds, it leads. Meaning, if there's any news going on in the city, if there's a shark attack, or a shooting, or a car accident, that's news. That's news, and you just gotta work with it. And that's why the best thing we've been able to do so well is work with families with special needs. And you guys have probably all seen this, and I'll talk a little bit about it more, but you all know a lot of what's driven the conversation about the industry is children with epilepsy. Let's face it, I mean, has changed the game for cannabis completely. And if you know from working on TV, like one thing I learned, you all know Sean Hannity, he's on our cartoon president, and he apparently does phone calls with President Trump now, but Sean Hannity, before now, did a point-counterpoint show with another expert called Combs. It was Hannity and Combs. And the way Fox did it was Hannity was, the good-looking Republican one, and Combs was the Democrat, so they made him ugly. And he was the ugly guy who everything you say you disagree with. But what you learn is in TV, it doesn't even matter what the person is saying. Sadly, it just matters like what they look like and what the visuals are and what things look like. And I hate to say it, but just working in national news for 10 years, it is completely true. It's why the biggest music stars now in a total auditory medium are Britney Spears and Justin Bieber and Nick Jonas. It's because of how they look, and they're singers. So that story with kids with epilepsy had a visual component. That those kids seizing was undeniably visual. It was undeniably obvious to everyone that this cannabis oil helps these children. Nothing else does. You can see there's before and after video of them seizing and then them seizure free. And that visual story, brought things like epically forward for the whole industry. And thankfully, I've been able to apply a lot of my previous dark side knowledge to helping make that happen and helping drive things forward. Just to further the conversation of Sapphire, I asked me to tell all of you, what is the value of public relations? So, really to picture it. I mean, we have a little over a dozen clients in San Diego right now, and the real struggle is, you can probably picture it, the CEO of every company, of every business, believes, my company is unique or special. We should be on the news because of what we did, what we innovated right now. And it's always that first struggle of, hey buddy, like, I love everything you're saying, but no. No. You should not be on the news. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And the truth is, I'm sure you guys see it, the cannabis industry is already becoming a very crowded space very quickly. There's a lot of money interests jumping into the space right now, and for everybody who's doing something in the space, honestly, you have a competitor who's doing the same thing. I mean, you too. So, a lot of the value of PR is what we call getting your story told, which is unbelievably important, and then all the little pieces to doing it. It's like, you can't even imagine everything you have to do to really make it happen. And the best story I can tell all of you that I've worked on, which is all real and unbelievable, is I was hired to do PR for Medical Marijuana Inc. and Hemp Meds, who are basically the guys who innovated CBD from hemp and released the first CBD products. And they innovated it, they created it, they had the best supply line, they had the most investor capital behind them, they had the best distribution network, and they were the ones positioned to succeed. Meanwhile, in 2013, they sat there with that capital, the best distribution, the best, highest quality products, the best fulfillment, the best sourcing, and they watched a competitor that probably, my guess is all of you have heard of, but called The Realm of Caring, which is CW, Charlotte's Web, that we've all heard of Charlotte's Web. They watched them get their story told by Dr. Sanjay Gupta on CNN in CNN's Weed in 2013. And let me tell you, nobody knew the value of getting your story told more than these guys when they invented this. They built the supply line, they had the capital behind it, they had the supply chain, and they watched Realm of Caring and CW get their story told. And no, I mean, I've never met anybody who knew the value of getting your story told in news media more than these guys who then hired me saying, holy crap, what the hell just happened? You know, we just got murdered, these guys just got their story told, and nationwide, everyone now believes these are the guys that invented this, these are the guys that developed this. CNN's Weed 3 said that Charlotte's Web is an exclusive strain of marijuana, which isn't true. Now if you go to their website, it says it's CBD from hemp, not an exclusive strain of marijuana. And you guys probably know Charlotte's Web had an 18,000 person waiting list in 2015 of people waiting to get this because they weren't the ones with the most capital. They didn't have the best supply line. They didn't, you know, they hadn't invented this, but CNN told their story and just, you know, I mean, everybody was calling them, everybody was writing about them, and I mean, you can see the media still believes this story, that this is true, and it's not, but, you know, the media are lemmings, and, you know, you get that seminal news hit, and forget about it, your business is in a different place, you're a success, and so that's a big part of what I do. You know, we get your story told, and we know how important that is. And trust me, that's not the only CEO of a company I've spoken to who's watched a competitor kick their ass at this. And, you know, it's like, you meet with these guys, there's nothing more soul draining. You know, they worked so hard at this, they developed this, they innovated this, and then they've watched a competitor get their story told in the news media, and I've literally sat down with them and looked in their eyes and said, you know, ooh, you know, I'm sorry, you know, we'll do our best to fight back. So another huge part about how important public relations is you really watch things, and you know, in America, if it's on TV, it becomes magically true. Like, it's suddenly true. Like, okay, oh wow, I saw this on TV, it's true. And it's funny, everybody says that social media has changed all the rules and changed everything, but it's funny, it really hasn't in this respect. It's still, in America, if it's on TV, it's true. You know, I saw this on TV, it's true. And literally, you have very little else to look at other than the last presidential election. I'm sorry, say whatever you want, but this man is a master of TV time. And going back to, the best thing about that CNN Charlotte's Web special was, I got into this a year after, in 2014. Things were still really different, but the fact that a, you know, national TV doctor, Sanjay Gupta, had reported that girls with epilepsy don't have seizures anymore taking this cannabis oil, I mean, it had changed everything. And you know, this had been on TV, this had been on TV with a recognized national brand like CNN, and that had made it true. And I mean, I worked at conferences across the country, in Chicago, where, you know, their medical law, the cops fingerprint you to get a medical card, to, you know, Baltimore, to Boston, to Nevada, before they had their recreational law. But ever since that happened, there was this feeling of, this was on TV, and I saw it, so this is true. You know, this is now true. And keep in mind, I mean, you have to think, before Dr. Sanjay Gupta did that, everything was different. I mean, it really was. Medical marijuana was a cloak for recreational legalization and getting high. I mean, it totally was. And the fact that Dr. Sanjay Gupta did that special, I mean, just changed the game. I mean, that was a seminal moment. You know, you still interview parents, you know, these parents of kids with epilepsy now, And they still say, well, I saw that CNN special, and then I started researching online, and I mean, it was a seminal moment, and it was a national TV news moment in America that made this all true. You know, okay, this is now true. I saw it on TV, and it's, you know, for better or worse, it's absolutely the way this country works. So, what is the value of public relations? So, I can tell you, since working in that, and I mean, I've worked with now dozens of clients trying to get their story told, trying to get in the newspaper, trying to get on TV, trying to get Sanjay Gupta to interview them for, you know, 2 minutes and would give anything to do that, or try to be in Forbes, you know, try to be quoted once in Forbes. Investment capital. 100%, if you are looking for investment capital for your startup or for your business, if you have news clippings of you've been in Forbes, you've been on CNN, you've been in Bloomberg, you're in a different place. I mean, it is a 7-figure difference of you now have the capacity to raise millions of dollars for your business. And I have seen that. I'm proud to say I've had clients do that after our work. And the really, really best, most prominent examples I will say are, you know, Canada is going legal, and is going legal for recreational sales on October 17th. You all know that, I have no doubt. So, you know, you have several growers up there in Canada. I think the best actually operationally positioned, this is just myself, I'm not the best educated on it, but is Aurora Cannabis. But you have this other one called Canopy Growth. And Canopy Growth has 100% kicked everyone's ass in getting their story told. They have just out-marketed these guys and kicked their ass. And you can just see it, and you guys probably saw the news today.
Canopy/Corona.
Yes, now owned by Corona Beer. Exactly. Just raised $5 million Canadian, $3.8 million from Constellation Brands, which is the makers of $1 billion, excuse me, $4 billion. Yes, which has got, I mean, you know, more, I only need, you know, 1/100th of that to retire, but yes, just raised $4 billion from Constellation Brands, the makers of Corona Beer. 100%, you know, today, I mean, Canopy Growth stock went, it was like $26 a share to $32 a share. Meanwhile, did you see Constellation Brands stock went down because everybody, the market, believed that they way overpaid for Canopy, and it wasn't worth $4 billion, and their stock went in the toilet. Why did a US-based example I will give you is MedMen Enterprises. And trust me, I've looked into MedMen, I've looked into MedMen as a maybe potential client, I've looked into MedMen as maybe a potential investor. Honestly, with MedMen Enterprises, if you really look at what other companies do, they don't have anything competitive. They really, really don't. I mean, they're not that well set up. They just tell their story really, really well. And so they are out there. There's this just perception of, oh yeah, oh MedMen, I've heard of them. I'm going to buy their stock once they get their listing in Canada. And they're just schooling the competition at just telling their story in the news media. And that is all it is. And right now we have one of their competitors, it's called SIVA, S-I-V-A, is like knocking down our door about this because they're pissed. And suddenly they've gotten their ass kicked at doing it, so now they see. And that's really a big part of this that I've seen, and since doing it is investors, they don't invest in a company because of their products, they don't invest in a company because of how they're positioned, their current sales. Investors invest in a company's story. And honestly, like Steve Jobs from Apple is one of the best of like, he came out and spun you a story, and he did so well, and you believe that this guy is so damn innovative, and even if, you know, Google and Samsung and Android and all these guys make a phone better than Apple, which they do, we're still gonna buy what this guy is doing because he's a better storyteller than his competition. So, you know, that is a big part of what we do. Another huge part is positioning executives as thought leaders. So this is one that can even seem a little ridiculous. I mean, explaining it to the CEO, and I mean, I know how difficult this stuff is because going to trade shows and, you know, going to Expo East or to the Marijuana Business Conference costs a company, and I know this very well. I mean, well over $10,000, like, you know, $15,000 to $20,000 having a booth, being a speaker, and takes a lot of time. And literally short-term payoff too. I mean, it's like horrible. It's like the worst sell I could ever think of making up. Yeah, you know, definitely pay $20,000 to go to this trade show. You know, sell less than $1,000 of your product at it, but I'll have you speak in a half-full room and maybe be interviewed by one local TV outlet and a newspaper. And don't worry, it'll be worth it over time because we're gonna build this momentum for you, and trust me, give me like 2 years, and then you'll be like a rock star, and I promise it'll happen. And that's basically about what explaining this is like, but we have really successfully done that. And the best example I can name, we've done a couple, but is Dr. Stuart Titus, who's the CEO of Medical Marijuana Inc. He's a very, very dear friend. They're based here in San Diego. And when I met Stuart, he was my former business partner, and he was like a quiet guy sitting in a corner under a pile of manila envelopes, and nobody knew who he was. He was unbelievably intelligent, and he was like unbelievably educated and smart, better than anyone I knew on the science of the cannabinoids, what they do, the different research, the research going on at the Salk Institute, the endocannabinoid system, the discovery in Israel, but it was all like bottled up like in here. And we got him out, and we got him out on the speaker circuit to like just unleash your like knowledge and your passion and like all this like, you know, shit that, you know, that I know you know, and it literally was amazing. And this last Marijuana Business Conference, which, you know, is like the Super Bowl now, we didn't even apply for him to speak. They invited Stu to speak at two, like a breakfast event and another conference event, and, you know, that's a big freaking deal. And it's like, you've arrived, Stu. They're calling us. You know, they want you. And the value of that, you know, it's like I can't sit with the CEO and say like, oh yeah, you know, you are making $2 million a year in sales because you're a thought leader, and the Marijuana Business Conference called you to be a speaker there. But literally, I mean, Stu is like famous now. I mean, he has people emailing him from Japan. Like, oh, I saw your video, you know, like, you're so amazing. I mean, the value is there. It's like impossible to quantify. And the last, what's the value in PR? The last one is actually the best one for me. Is you guys were asking the councilman all of these tough questions. I definitely heard that. And they're all, you know, warranted, and you guys, you know, put the politicians to the screws, you know. I mean, just go to it. You can do twice as long. But the best impact is honestly on enforcing legislation. in your local area. And I have done that, I have seen that. When it works, it is awesome. And I mean, the truth is, any business owner going after the councilman, in La Mesa, that's going to be tough. Because the way they're going to see that is, well, this guy, so you want to make a lot of money. You want to sell a lot, I get it. And everyone else in the room wants to make money too. If you take a patient, a mother in La Mesa who needs access to medical cannabis and needs her dispensary up and operating within a week, and you get her story into the local papers that this is being held up, the politicians are being difficult, the special moneyed interests are screwing this whole thing up, you can force things to happen that you would not believe. And will that happen in La Mesa exactly? I don't know. Obviously, California has had medical cannabis for a long time, so it's a complicated market. But I can give you guys a couple examples of things I have worked on that have done things that I can't believe. Like when I die, I'll be happy I was able to work things on things like this. Literally. Maybe that's a little morbid, I guess, but I am. I still am. So. In 2014, there was this little girl in New York named Bela Pagano. And New York had basically no medical marijuana law. Bela basically had epilepsy. Not exactly, she was born prematurely. Her mother had used birth control, but Bela was still born. And she had all kinds of birth defects from the birth and had a shunt and all kinds of complications. She had horrible seizures, and she started using CBD from hemp in New York State, which her father believed was impossible, and traveled across the country to find CBD, and started getting it shipped to them in New York from hemp. So doctors in Stony Brook Hospital, which thankfully we finally got documented by NBC News, saw that the doctors refused to administer the CBD to Bela over pharmaceutical drugs, even though pharmaceutical drugs have tons of side effects. And as you all know, you can overdose on drinking water before you can overdose on hemp oil. But the doctors saw what happened. And the nurses wouldn't administer it, but they put in their nurses report that they were administering CBD oil to this little girl with epilepsy. Fast forward, Bela was the inspiration for one of the first ever CBD studies for epilepsy in New York. And Stony Brook Hospital, while it's really weird, they deny that they allowed CBD to be administered to the girl in the hospital to this day, and God knows I've tried to get the news to report it. We got one line in NBC News out about this. But Stony Brook Hospital led New York's medical prescription card program to letting CBD be prescribed for little kids. And Bela was the first girl on record who had epilepsy and took CBD and made her seizure free. And 100% I know, she's the little girl who did it. So even better, bigger world scale than that. Basically, when I started working on this in 2014, I started working with a mom in Dallas. Her name was Penny Howard. Penny Howard's daughter, Harper, had CDKL5 epilepsy. And 100% I can tell you, whether you've heard of her or not, or Google her tonight, Penny's daughter, Harper, changed the world. And she 100% did. And what happened was, Penny's daughter, Harper, had CDKL5 epilepsy, and she used CBD oil with Harper and Facebooked it. And Penny's like an amazing global, Facebook mom, power mom, social media mom. So, from Facebooking using CBD oil with her daughter, a mother in Brazil found Penny's Facebook page and started having CBD sent to her in Brazil. and because both of their daughters had CDKL5 epilepsy, which is this particular horrible disorder. And the mother in Brazil, her name is Catiele Fischer. All of this is in a documentary that's on Netflix now. You can download it this weekend if you want to see it. It's called Illegal, which is Portuguese for illegal. The mom in Portuguese got caught importing CBD oil from hemp. Customs took it away, and Catiele, the mother in Brazil, said, "Fuck you, I'm not going to let you take this away from my daughter." Her seizures are now going up, and she sued the federal government of Brazil, and she sued Anvisa, which is Brazil's FDA. And within 2 to 3 days, the court ruled this is inhumane to keep this from a child. And in America, we're still learning that this happened. We've gotten it published in a couple like weird publications, like Dope Magazine, things like that. But it's kind of trickling out that this happened in Brazil. It's a CBD oil made here in California. Now, because of a mother's lawsuit, it's federally legal for import. It's not only federally legal for import, but this is a huge deal, into Brazil, not just for epilepsy, but for Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, chronic pain, cancer pain related to chemotherapy, ADD, ADHD, and autism. Brazil is importing CBD from hemp, largely from the United States, for all of these conditions, and the federal government there is subsidizing the payments under their federal government healthcare system. And you think of how far in the US are we from the healthcare system subsidizing fucking payments for cannabis for people with Parkinson's disease here, or cancer pain from chemotherapy here, or chronic pain here in the United States, where we are the consumer of over 80% of the world's opioids for pain here. And the extrapolation of that major change, that phenomenon, is a huge thing I've worked on. And yes, it's difficult. Yes, the US news media doesn't give a crap about what happens in foreign countries. It's a major struggle, major early lesson that I read at Fox. But we have gotten it published. We've gotten it published in Dope Magazine. We've gotten it published on Huffington Post. You can Google search Penny Howard, Hope for Harper. She does a fundraising run every September in Dallas, Texas for CDKL5 epilepsy. Because of a lot of our efforts, Penny has told me that literally she used to go to a CDKL5 conference. The number of doctors there in 2014 was 3 doctors. Last year, the number of doctors there was 50 doctors. So, as I've heard said tonight, it's a process. It's like really frustrating in a battle how slow the process is. But 100%, I've told you guys my story. It's what I care about. This mom, Penny's like a dear friend. She calls my wife and I once a week, and she's like my therapist almost. She, lays everything out. So that's kind of my, my spiel, public relations, what we do, and what is the value. I can literally say it's almost funny to me that notoriously, when the CEO is making his marketing budget, it's the hardest for him to identify the ROI. Well, what am I spending all this money on PR? And really, then when you strip it down, you look at Charlotte's Web, the CNN Week special, what it did for those guys up until now. You all know what Charlotte's Web is, what it's done for canopy growth, what's done for MedMen. Then what these news stories, these mothers with kids with epilepsy has done. Oklahoma, the bastion red state of conservatism, just passed a medical marijuana law. And that was a huge, huge deal, and that's all based on PR and PR around mothers of children with epilepsy and the data around the opioid crisis, that opioid overdose deaths fall by over 30% in states with legal, at least a medical program marijuana. So that is what I do. And thank you again to Sapphire for the great introduction, and thank you guys, thank you for the team for turning out to support me. And I'm more than happy to take all of your questions. Just keep in mind you're asking a PR spin man. Yes, yes. And I don't blame you. And please keep on believing that because you should believe 60 Minutes over Sean Hannity, that's for sure. So, yes, yes. I will qualify that. Well, sadly, it depends on who you're talking to. Because, you know, you go to, you know, my grandmother for Thanksgiving, and she believes that what Sean Hannity is saying is true. And trust me, I know how horrifying that is, and we're all living through that right now. But, you know, that is another element. However, yes. That is the weird part of news media marketing. And what's funny is everybody and their mother will want to tell you, you know, oh, you know, social media killed the news. The news is dead. You know, and honestly, it is not true at all. The brand of 60 Minutes, or the Washington Post, or the New York Times, still has tremendous value, even right now. Wall Street Journal, absolutely, absolutely. And your question absolutely reflects that of people have and own these news media outlets. You know, it's the one that they subscribe to their email alerts, or they follow them on Facebook. And I'm happy to say, especially, you know, going through what we're going through right now, I'm happy to say we're kind of in a new age. This is like the news media's day, reporting on, you know, this administration and what's going on right now. And correct, you know, those news media brands have not lost their value, and reporting is alive and well today. Journalism is as well. And as a former journalist, and yes, you know, I didn't work at the most reputable outlet, but I am very proud of that, and that's totally true.
The film Spotlight, which won Best Picture based on a journalism story in Boston Globe.
Yes, yes. Oh God, I have watched the news media manipulate literally everything from Oscar awards, you know, who has won Best Picture from who has won a presidential race, or who was lucky enough to win the Republican primary of a presidential race because nobody else knew who the hell was running because of the TV news media, which is what I believe what happened in the last Republican primary. To, you know, what you go to the supermarket to buy. And as scary as that is, what's great is cannabis is on the right side of this. And I've been really proud and excited to watch it play out. And as was brought up when the councilman was speaking, and actually I thought he did a great job, I believe that cannabis is not a partisan issue at all. In fact, I've been happy to work with my old contacts at Fox to have one of my premier clients and dear friend quoted in a Fox News article that marijuana means votes. That was written around the midterm elections, and that Jeff Sessions had better shut up or he's going to cost his own party the midterm elections, and that the exact same election that Donald Trump won was the biggest ever election for medical marijuana. We had a historic 8 states, including California, legalize in that election. I have been able to quote a Florida congressman, Congressman Carlos Curbelo, who basically went out of his way to publicize a quote saying, "Congressmen in these legal states, you had better fight to protect these newly legal businesses, medical or recreational," and he was a Republican saying that. I've been proud to have Penny Howard appear on a Health Talk with Dr. Manny on Fox News, doing a special about hemp from CBD for seizures, literally, you know, on Fox News Channel. But even more than that, honestly, I can say, I don't like the guy, but I'm psyched that, as you all probably know, Mitch McConnell is the biggest proponent, Kentucky Republican, Senate Majority Leader, of a federal bill to federally legalize hemp. And did make the weird move we saw in the last week or two of putting himself on the committee that's supposed to arbitrate between the House and Senate bills to reconcile the bills, yes. And he, I mean, love or hate the guy, we have a Republican Senate Majority Leader fighting to federally legalize hemp. And, you know, while I'm not psyched about everything going on, I am psyched about that. And I don't think that cannabis is a partisan issue, and it's one of my favorite things about it.
We've got Boehner now on the chairman's.
Yes, yeah, that was a huge story. Yes, that was a huge story in June. Former, like uber conservative, John Boehner came out and said, "Well, I'm gonna work with a marijuana company," and I was like, "All right, all right." But that was a major statement of it's not a partisan issue. Some of the biggest conservative names out there are throwing their hat in the cannabis ring. So,
And that's because
yes.
money. Follow the money. It's about the money. It doesn't matter.
Yes, indeed it is.
They can't stand on any moral high ground when there's that much money to be had.
No, they can't at all. And that's more of the trend that's coming. And literally, as a New York news media cynic, I don't make any bones about that. Of the Constellation Brands is the maker of Corona beer. Why are they giving Canopy Growth, a grower in Canada where the market is smaller than it is here in California, $3.8 billion? And the answer is the big moneyed interests are ready to, they see the writing on the wall and they're ready to jump in.
We got time for 2 more questions.
There's another local company that seems to be grabbing a lot of market share in the CBD oil business, especially with their plus CBD oil. Again, I've never seen them on CNN or any specials. How is CB Sciences, taking the industry by storm? What is their story?
Yes. So keep in mind, these guys who I worked with, who are behind Medical Marijuana Inc. and Hemp and RCHO, they were the original investors in Cannabest, is what that company was called. And Cannabest is subject of the famous Forbes Pot Stop Billionaires article. Because at one time, Cannabest, now it's CV Sciences or CBSI, was Cannabest, and they're an OTC stock. They were the first CBD hemp pipeline from Europe to the US, and such the first pipeline, all those standards, European farmers, all under HIA versus DEA, and those investors were very savvy, and they ran that OTC stock literally from $2 a share to, at one time, if you literally look, in 2013, 14, it was at $200 a share, crazily enough. But they are a major sales company in the CBD market. I would offer you don't see them on CNN or read about them because they haven't yet hired us. And they're an amazing story about they are not getting their story told. I think without question, they're not getting their story told.
But they did just get the neurosurgeon for the Pittsburgh Steelers to join their board, and the stock popped like 20-30%.
Yes, they've been very active recently, and I've been following them. They've had that, and their Q2 sales grew, I think, over 200% to $12.8 million in Q2 alone. So they have been doing very impressive things on the sales front. Literally, the best I can say is that a really respected former colleague, Chris Boucher, used to work very, very closely with Cannabist, and literally pulled me aside at the marijuana business conference, and he was like, buddy, like for all the stuff that we're doing, like our PR, like fucking like sucks. Like you gotta help us, you gotta get us on CNBC and all that. And that is the best example of really, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter how good your sales are. It doesn't matter how successful your company is. You've gotta have a great story, sell your story, and work with somebody who has the right contacts to get you onto CNBC. It really, really is true. And they are a great example of, they should be out there and getting covered as a hemp industry leader locally in San Diego, even in the national news media, and they aren't, because they're struggling with this. They're struggling with getting their story told. Yes, sir?
What would an approximate cost be for your company to come into a new company and sell the story?
Sure. So great question, and we can always grab a beer and follow up. Any one of you, we'll talk about that all night if you guys want. So
We can talk at a later time.
yes, of course. Anybody who wants my email, I just know I do care about this, and I care about San Diego businesses, and I care about cannabis businesses. And I know how hard this is. It's really hard. You know, this is a crowded market, and I mean, Cannabis is a multi-million-dollar market cap company that's struggling with this right now. It's a great example. So it honestly depends on exactly what you want and what we would do. But
So if you're preparing for an IPO, then
yes,
this is a story that would go out as soon as the quiet period was over.
we would explode. Yes. So as you might imagine, it's a little crazy. We literally have 3 to 4 companies right now in the middle of that process, and they're either going through reverse mergers or in the middle of going public, and they are ready for us to like turn on the guns of like, we did this, and this study showed this, and we just signed up the biggest neurosurgeon from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now, you know, book them on Fox News for us or on CNBC, and like we have, you know, 3 to 4 clients. So if you are looking to IPO, depending on how much you want, how much national press you wanted, probably we talk to you looking in the area of something like 5 to 10K a month. If you're a local San Diego grower, something like that, with aspirations that are not that high, not looking to be on CNBC tomorrow, definitely we would talk to you about tailoring that to something like like a couple $1,000 a month. So it depends on what you want. The best thing I can say is literally, PR is expensive, almost ridiculously. And what I love is we actually contracted a Manhattan-based PR firm for a client called Axum, and the firm is called Grayling, and we paid them $30,000 a month. And we told them, okay, we want to help get the client on Fox Business, on CNBC, and they said, we want to be on Dr. Oz. They said, what you want is impossible. And it was a big, because we're a startup here in San Diego, we're still pretty small. It was a big gut check for me where I was like, did they $30,000 a month? Is this impossible? Because I said, we can fucking do this. And that was a big moment. That was in late 2016 where I said, we can do this. And Catherine, who's from my team right there, she just got RSHO on the Doctors. That was last March, was on CBS National News, The Doctors. She's a beast. She just got mentioned in Forbes. Mentioned in Forbes as a good buy along with Canopy Growth and Aurora Cannabis. So, I can tell you, like, my team is damn good. We're like a honed knife edge, and we're looking for, you want us at your back in a knife fight. I can tell you that much.
They look like they're knife fighters.
Don't they? My knife fighters, my warrior. Yeah, don't let them fool you. There's a knife behind those smiles.
And give it up for CW. Thank you again. All right, everybody. I don't have much else to say except thanks for coming. If you want more beer, we're going to stick around and some people network and mingle and do their thing. So thanks again for coming. Enjoy yourselves. Bye.
Yes.